one day as well that had me.
Oh my God, you didn't cry at the twist in one day?
No.
Oh my God.
But you did cry at 1,000 boys. Welcome to the Sheer Lux Team Podcast with me, Charlotte Collins. This week I'm joined by Harriet Russell and Lou Hough. Hi both.
Hello.
I haven't done one of these for ages. I feel a bit out of practice.
I know, I haven't been hosted by you in a long
Hosted
time.
by me. Welcome to my podcast.
Welcome to my
Let's go straight in with new and noteworthy because I thought we had a meeting last week to talk about what we're going to talk about and there's so much to get through. Can I talk about my weekend first?
I always don't want to hear about your weekend because I'm so jealous about your weekend, but fine if you have to.
I went to the Eras tour.
Oh, yes, because I came in this morning and you were talking about it to Sapna & Co. And all I heard was, it was kind of like my wedding.
You know how after you get married, you spend days like looking at the videos and like talking about it, like texting your boyfriend about it, husband, whatever. Like all we've been speaking about for like 48 hours is what an amazing experience the concert was. And going to the concert really confirmed that I'm not a Swiftie. Like there were vast chunks of like half an hour batches where I didn't know a single word. I never even heard the
But
song
we're still
before.
enjoyable.
Still amazing. Like it's simply about the scale, the stamina of the woman, the fact that she goes out for 3.5 hours. Like it's an amazing show. You know, she's impressive enough. And she's done that night after night for 1.5 years.
Yeah.
And it's so, you're not only like wowed by the fact that she's doing what she's doing and just so confidently.
Yeah.
But then it's the fact that you know that she did it the night before and she's going to do it the night
And
after.
then maybe she hasn't missed a single show because she's either lost her voice or is
Not
sick.
once.
Yeah.
We're trying to work out like when does she eat and how does she refuel and does she eat during the show and like how is she hydrating? Like she's on stage for like the whole thing. They obviously between each era she changes costumes. So there's maybe 2 minutes in between every 8 songs or so. Like it's incredible. I was listening to The Rest is Entertainment this morning, which if people aren't listening to is probably, apart from ours, my favourite podcast at the moment. It's so good.
I've heard of it.
Oh my God. It's from The Rest is, you know, it's The Rest is Politics, The Rest is Entertainment, The Rest is Money, The Rest is Sports. Entertainment is with Richard Osman and Marina Hines.
Okay.
And there's 2 episodes a week and one of them they do a Q&A. So people just, and it's anything to do with the entertainment world. Obviously with a heavy skew on kind of TV and film production because that's their worlds. But also obviously books and, you know, anything kind of in the entertainment space. And somebody wrote in with a question last week about the production that goes into a major tour with a major artist, and they were talking about the logistics of it, and they were saying that like anyone they can't imagine a more like fear-inducing job than being in charge of the logistics for the set. And they were saying somebody of Taylor Swift's scale basically will travel, that set is their set and it comes all over the world with them. And they were saying they often have 2 because of course it takes days to rig them up. So if you've got to be in Singapore and you're just leaving Sydney or whatever, then you have to have like the duplicates. They'll have recce'd years before the tour actually even happens. They'll have gone to recce each of those stadiums to check that they even have the capacity for what they can do. Like there's so much.
Fascinating, that is.
Which might play into
many
why
mechanisms.
it's so minimalist, because then if they do forget something or something gets lost, it's sort of easily replaced.
Well, I would imagine it's more that it's adaptable to every stadium.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was amazing. My absolute highlight was Who's Afraid of Little Old Me? That was my absolute highlight. I absolutely love that song. It was so amazing.
I generally don't think I've ever been more envious, ever. So when I saw that you went, it was like, it's like in me. I was having dinner with my dad and my husband and I saw and I was like,
yeah, sorry.
You're not going to guess what has happened.
For those listening, I didn't have tickets until Saturday afternoon. So it was a very last minute thing.
I've told my famous story before, but I saw Taylor Swift when she was a warm-up act.
You have, yes. Who was she warm up for?
So it was very niche. It's 2008. I'm staying on a ranch in Colorado with my family. There's a big country music festival happening in Cody, Wyoming, just over the border. They're like, let's drive, why not? One of our big country bands that we like was playing, so we're like, fine, they were headlining. And she was their warm-up act.
I'm going to see Girls Aloud on Thursday, so
I'm quite jealous of that.
I'll get my pop fix.
I'm quite jealous of that. I saw a really good TikTok, which was it was like a T-shirt that somebody had printed to wear to Girls Aloud. The audio of Cheryl Cole, like I don't know, 15 years ago, being like, "What? I don't think we'll ever have a reunion. How tragic! A bunch of 30-somethings running around the stage," and they had that exact quote like printed on a T-shirt.
Love that.
Yeah, throwback. It'll be really fun.
I'm really
What song are you most
excited.
looking forward to?
Sound of the Underground.
Yes,
classic.
Absolute classic.
Yes.
Did it for karaoke on my 30th birthday.
Did you?
Absolutely wasted. Yep.
Do that.
Yeah, and no one
Essential.
else on the stage,
For
even
those
though they
that
were my friends,
didn't see
knew what I
Charlotte
was
just
doing.
swaying side to side.
Aggressive swaying with a fake microphone
Yeah.
stand. Let me just really quickly fire through the other things that are new and noteworthy for me. I watched also this weekend Federer 12 Final Days.
Ooh.
So it basically follows the final 12 days of his career from the moment in which they announced that he's going to be retiring through to his final tournament, the Laver Cup, which is basically like...
It's similar to the Ryder Cup in that
Yes.
it's basically a match between Europe and rest of the world.
Exactly.
So they sort of pool players from those respective
Yes.
regions to face off in a series of singles matches and doubles matches.
Exactly. So, which meant that on his team was, of course, Djokovic, Nadal, and Murray, and equally that his final match would be a doubles match with Nadal. And people will remember those like unbelievably emotional scenes at the end of that match, like where they're all just sobbing. It's like all of these sporting documentaries where, like, even if you don't care about tennis, there's no tennis in it really, apart from the final match. Like, even if you don't care about tennis, it's a bit like to the Taylor Swift point, just watching somebody achieve something at the very top of their game is always so inspiring. And it's Federer, like we lived through such a golden age of tennis, and then to see him, you know, really amazing behind the scenes access to Nadal, Djokovic, and Murray as well. And it's just this really lovely kind of moment in time tied up in a bow of this glory tennis era that we lived through. Like, I suppose the kind of overarching theme of it is how almost retiring from professional sports is kind of like it's almost like dying a death and stuff. Basically, there's a quote in it where they say that professional sports people die twice. Like, everything you've ever known is suddenly gone, and it's him really struggling with what the hell does the rest of my life look like, and it's really amazing.
I guess like it's not like everything has gone, because will still be surely commentating, like all it's not, it's like suddenly he's going to go into art,
of course,
like,
and this is the point at which he's at here is who will want me, what will I do,
yeah.
you know, how can I, you know, I'm leaving the world, whereas and there's a point at which one of the coaches says exactly that, like he thinks that he's about to like drop off the face of the earth, but like he's like
not.
there will be plenty of
like
opportunities.
sorry, when Beckham retired, like he has not gone anywhere.
Exactly
he
that.
is still like a huge face in
but the routine of professional tennis,
totally,
obviously
totally.
You're stepping away from the tour. He'd been on the tour, I think it was 19 years. Like, you know, he's the face of On Running. I think he's an investor in On as well.
Yes, he is.
And you know, he's just recently done the Louis Vuitton campaign with Nadal, with Annie Leibovitz, and like, you know, he's fine.
Yeah.
He's fine. We don't need to worry about him. But it's really worth a watch.
fascinating.
Well, I'll start with the book, which is called The Ministry of Time. Again, it's getting lots of attention. And I think I came across it first on the Waterstones podcast. And she was on it talking about the Ministry of Time, what inspired the idea. I think she describes it as a book about time travel and love. However, it's also kind of a commentary on the immigration crisis. So Kellyanne Bradley herself, there is a bit of a like autobiographical slant to it, in the sense that she is British Cambodian, and the narrator in the book, whose name we never find out, is also British Cambodian. She works for the Home Office. It's set in a sort of near future. They're still talking about the pandemic, so it still feels like it could be sort of credibly 10 years from now, not like 50, you know, we're not walking around in spacesuits. But essentially what's happened is the government has discovered time travel. They have found a portal and they are testing it. They're putting it through a pilot scheme to see if it works, to see if it's safe. And in order to do that, they decide to bring back about somewhere between like 5 and 10 people from the past who would have met it's a historical record that they met a sort of untimely end. And the idea is that by bringing them out of the past, they're not going to affect the future because they've already died. For instance, they take one guy who died at the Somme, and they're all known by their year that they died. So he's known as 1916. However, he's not the main character. The main character is 1847, or Commander Graham Gore, who was a real person. If you Google him, you'll find out that he was part of a polar expedition to the Arctic that went horribly wrong. 2 ships, I think it was about 120 men, went to try and discover what's now known as the Northwest Passage, but they got stuck in the ice and basically starved to death. It was pretty grisly. And Graham Gore, it's interesting because in real life, to this day, we don't really know what happened to him. He died very early in the expedition. They had already got trapped in the ice, but there was still plenty of food. It wasn't the depths of winter. He was actually pretty fit and healthy. He was a good shot. You know, like, there's no reason that he should have sort of copped it early. So it fits quite nicely into the narrative that it's because the Home Office went back in time and sort of plucked him out.
I see. Okay.
That works quite nicely. And what happens is these people come to the future and they're paired up with what's known as bridges, which is essentially just like 10 civil servants that they've sort of trained for this particular mission. And they have to cohabit for a year and try and assimilate to modern life. That's the experiment.
And sorry, what has the narrator got to do with any of it?
She is one of the Bridges.
Right.
So she gets paired up with 1847 or Graham Gore. I think the Telegraph, and this is interesting, gave it like 1 star, but somewhere else gave it 5. So it's a book that's dividing opinion. And I would say that about 2/3 of the way in, I was starting to think, like, where is this going? Like, we're sort of just following them through everyday life. Some people are struggling, some people are not. I think I read the last like 70 pages in one sitting. I was just like, oh my God.
Oh, really?
Oh my God. And then there's a massive, massive twist. Just basically turn it into an action film. Like,
Ooh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
But do you like that? Because sometimes that really bothers me. Yellow Face, that really bothered me.
I knew
how
you were gonna bring
reading,
that up.
yeah, you're reading 80% of one novel and then the final 20% is a whole other story. And you're like, I didn't sign up for this.
It doesn't feel like a whole other story. It does feel, for the majority, like something is bubbling and you're just not sure what's going wrong. And then the end, I think the last 2 pages, I was in floods of tears.
Oh, really?
Which never ever I think there's only one other book that's made me cry my whole life. I'm not a book crier.
Really?
Yeah.
What
What was the other one? Yeah.
It's this book called 1,000 Boy Kisses, which is basically about these two teens. No, it's
That's
really
good,
sad,
Harriet.
guys. It's really
Did
sad.
you never read any Jodie Picoult? Oh my God, like My Sister's Keeper.
Yeah.
And those,
Oh my God, My
those
Sister's Keeper.
books. Yeah.
It took me such a long time to recover
Yeah.
from that. Even saying it, I've got an overwhelming.
Yes. And
Feeling.
also, what's the one? The Book Thief. Did you never read The Book Thief?
The book
No.
thief.
That I remember reading that on a lilo and sobbing.
Yeah.
Like
I was on a
sobbing on a lilo. Yeah. Have you never read The Book Thief?
No.
Oh my God, Harriet. It's what I couldn't even tell you what it's about. You must read that. It's brilliant.
One day as well, that had me.
Oh my God, you didn't cry at the twist
Yeah.
in one day.
No.
Oh my God.
But you did cry at 1,000 Boy Kisses.
Guys,
Sorry,
if
what's it
anyone
about?
else has read 1,000 Boy Kisses, drop comments below.
What's it about?
It's about these 2 children who are like best friends when they're little. He moves from Norway to the US. They're neighbours. They grow up to be best friends. They blossom into more. And then he has to move away, go back to Norway for a bit. And there's a very painful breakup scene. And he comes back and they sort of try and reconnect, and they do. And it turns out that now she has an incurable disease. Did you cry? Okay, no, wait, sorry. Did you cry when you watched A Walk to Remember?
Yeah, but we're not talking about films. We're talking about books. That's
Okay,
different.
but it's the same plot.
Okay, you
A
know what
Walk
else?
to
You know what else made
Remember.
me sob? Atonement. The end of Atonement.
Oh,
That didn't make me sad.
Oh
It
my
made
God,
me,
that's
well, no,
that's
it
the
made me
ultimate
sad,
plot twist.
but it didn't make me cry.
I don't think we talk enough about how Atonement is the best plot twist ever.
It is the best
What's
plot
the best
twist.
plot?
So okay, spoiler alert. Don't listen to
Yeah.
this if you have never watched or read Atonement.
Skip.
No, I feel like they messed it up in the film, didn't they? Anyway, in the book, so it's their relationship blossoming, and then he goes off to war,
Yeah.
and then it's about when he comes back from war, and then you find out that bit was all imagined and actually he died in war.
They do that in the film.
Goosebumps.
that
Look.
happens a
Oh.
lot. Like
They do that
in
in the film.
imaginary relationship.
It's a bit like The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
It's quite a Sixth Sense-y, to be fair.
Sorry, A Little Life.
Never finished it because it was too hard to read.
Did you?
Okay, so you quit before you cry. That doesn't count.
No. It wasn't. To me, Little Life wasn't about crying. It was like
Yeah.
I'm actually quite disturbed
quite
by this,
traumatic,
and it's
yeah.
quite. It's upsetting. It's
yes.
harrowing.
Yes.
I guess because this is more about like a romance, and then you find out at the end kind of what's happened, and you just think, oh, they don't make men like this. They just
Are you crying? So you're
because he's from 1847.
Oh, this one. Sorry, I thought you
okay.
were talking about the Boy Kiss one again.
No. The other thing that is sort of quite new that I went to yesterday was the Naomi V&A exhibition
How was that?
in fashion.
Yes.
Kind of exactly how I expected it to be, which is I had read some reviews before I went, which I wouldn't normally do, but I don't know. Curiosity got the better of me, I suppose.
This is at the V&A.
It's a retrospective of her career.
Curated by her, I
Well,
believe.
yes, she's had quite a heavy hand in the organising. I don't know that this is true, but I feel like I've either read it somewhere or she has said it, which is that basically she pitched them the idea.
I mean, why not?
Well, and so this is kind of what I want to talk about with it. It's not so much the actual exhibition, which to me, yes, like there are some interesting pieces in it. She wore in a, I think is it Versace? Like a Barbie pink kind of tweedy,
Yeah.
waffly suit. that's very iconic. There's also a Valentino dress that was sort of pop arty that she famously wore on a catwalk and then just basically kept it on, never gave it back, went out for dinner that night. But these aren't, I wouldn't say they're pieces that when you look at them you think defining in the way that you would look at, I don't know, Marilyn Monroe's like white dress. Do you know what I mean?
The whole point of a model is that they're a clothes horse. So therefore, how can any one item be really strongly associated with them?
And I think the critics were sort of anticipating the fact that it might be quite a puff piece in the sense that it was obviously going to be very flattering. I have to say there is a silver Dolce & Gabbana dress, which she famously wore when she had the personal assistant phone throwing incident. She was obviously ordered to do community service for 5 days. I mean, what a punishment. But anyway, she came out of the US Department for Sanitation in a silver Dolce & Gabbana dress that is very famous. You can Google it, and she's got like this little bob, and it literally looks like she's going to the Oscars or something. But at the same time, it's obviously a very flattering view. However, I think that's kind of the more interesting talking point. It's not so much like what's in there, but like how she's just so into herself. Like,
but to me, it's not that. Like, we were having this conversation in a very different context earlier, but about like putting yourself forward for things, and
she's
just,
her own biggest hype
like
man.
that. We all need a bit more of that energy.
Totally.
That's what I mean.
I would never ever. I don't think the V&A are going to do an exhibition with me anytime soon. But I might just put it forward, damn it. But yeah, like we all need, because the worst anyone can ever say is no.
Yeah,
And I feel like I really believe that, but I forget to apply that to myself. Like it's an easy
I think
phrase to say.
maybe that's I mean, she is British, but like that's so kind of like within our nature that like you are not good enough. You could not believe that you are good enough. Like, and that's just so part of us. So whether that is,
you're not very self-congratulatory, like that's not in our nature. There's a clip at the moment circulating TikTok of the founder of Monzo talking about the difference between setting up a business in the UK, he's British, and setting up a business in America, and how basically everyone he said in the UK who's like, I'm going to start a bank, was like, mate, not a chance. Like, don't you, like, what are you talking about? Including lawyers, you know, whatever, advisory types. And he went to New York and said it, and everyone's like, cool, let me introduce you to this person, that's amazing, I've got a contact for you, blah, blah. And that is the nature. Like we default to kind of negativity and self-deprecation, even if we're positive people. I don't think we jump to it. I also think
there's that thing of like, you know, if you suggest yourself to do an exhibition with the V&A and they say no, you're like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not quite what I thought I was. Like,
well, it's fear of failure, isn't it?
Totally. But then also that what you believe of yourself is not how everybody else sees you.
Fear of
rejection.
So
I do think it's how you take rejection. Like, I'm not someone who takes criticism or rejection very well at all.
So you protect yourself by like lowering the bar.
Yeah, exactly. It's self-preservation, isn't it?
She is a bastion, and everyone knows the name Naomi Campbell, even if they don't know that much about her, they know who she is. So, you know, good for her.
Yeah. And also I think the thing is, you'd like to assume that we all know that achievements do not directly correlate with self-esteem. I've obviously heard David Gandy tell his sort of career story quite a few times, and he always says that he was doing a lot of catalogue work, which was also like amazing money, but like it's just not what he wanted to be doing. And he had this agent and she was like, you're Dolce, I promise you you're Dolce, but if you want to go after that high fashion, you have to quit catalogues now, and we have to have this singular focus on this one thing. And like he did it because he had someone else saying to him, I believe in you. But like to have that self-belief that you could step away from something that, you know, pays well, is a secure gig, to chase like a pipe dream, because really there'd been no kind of precedent of a male model looking like him, you know, out there. I think there's also a female angle to it, and perhaps that's why we're more surprised about Naomi. Would we be having this conversation if she were a man?
So true.
Yeah,
so
true.
Like I think we all jump to how peculiar, she doesn't loathe herself.
Yeah.
So, that's so strange.
Yeah, how strange. How different. How strange that she's actually
it's got some self-confidence.
Wow. I think she's worth something.
Anyway, worth seeing?
Yes, there are some interesting fashion moments in there if you're really into it. So yes. The other thing I'm very excited about, we won't have a chance to watch it before this airs, but the DVF documentary comes out tomorrow.
As does the Celine Dion documentary this week. So they'll both be live by the time this goes live.
Oh, so many documentaries.
So much to watch this weekend.
So much to watch, yeah. The Celine one, this was not what I was going to talk about, but a lot of the clips have sort of started circulating already. And people just say it's absolutely heartbreaking.
It's been completely raved about. But I mean, it is terrible what's happening to her. Yeah, really awful.
For people who don't know, she has been diagnosed with stiff person syndrome. Her body is sort of seizing up, and I guess one day she will have severe mobility issues, which is really sad.
That's terrible.
But I think this documentary focuses obviously on how that has affected her vocals. quite quickly.
Wow.
Although she's actually been hiding this diagnosis for longer than we've all been aware. It's not something that just sort of happened.
No, because do you remember she had that major fashion moment maybe like
Yeah.
a couple of years ago? Was it
With-
post-pandemic or?
Mr. Style Architect.
No way.
Image Architect, Law Roach.
Is that right?
He was doing it at the time,
Is that right? I didn't know that.
I don't know if he's
right.
still her image architect, but...
He comes back round in every conversation, doesn't he?
Every
It's so
episode,
relevant.
Law's here.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Oh, that's really tragic. But the DVF doc, is that about her whole life?
Yes, and that I think it's essentially the same sort of thing. It's looking at, her career. I always think of like her and Coco Chanel in kind of the same way, because Coco Chanel obviously freed women up from this like very corseted, restrictive way of dressing. And then DVF, is it the 70s? She invents the wrap dress, which is like radical at the time. And this completely new, easy way of dressing for working women, which of course, like the 70s, they're getting this massive emancipation in the workplace. So it sort of goes hand in hand. And yeah, I'm fascinated. I'd really want to watch it.
I've really, though, been so saddened by the decline of her brand. Like,
Yeah.
do you remember in the Meatpacking District? That store
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
it was the one that featured in the city when, you know, like back in whatever it was, the noughties.
With the huge staircase.
Yeah, like incredible, you know, it was like that big crittled building in the movie.
Yeah.
Like that to me was like just the epitome of New York glam. I mean, for all of
Yeah.
us. And like, it just really,
I know,
it's really
but I really
demised.
think that is the same for every brand. When every brand has their moment, like no one can ever maintain that.
yeah, that's true.
lead.
That's true.
It's so sad, but obviously she is like an icon
Yes.
in her own right. So it's so fascinating. To
And the
know
brand
that.
is still going.
It's
Yeah.
they're all still go. They don't go
Yeah.
away. But like, how you continue to like, there's always someone new, someone bringing something else out.
I don't know if there are any stores anymore either. But also an unbelievable life story.
Yeah,
incredible
Yes.
history, incredible family. So
Yeah.
it's, I
Really,
hope they delve
really
into that in the way they do.
And
but-
she's so fabulous as well. Mine not so much new and noteworthy, but I've spoken about summer footwear recently, and I used to be a very much a die-hard Birkenstock fan. I feel like you were either in the Birkenstock or the flip-flop camp, and I've taken a twist, and I think the whole Carolyn Bessette Kennedy look is having like such a moment, and now I'm very much moving into flip-flop camp.
That, I mean, welcome.
Yeah.
What have you bought any flip-flops?
So I've got my trusty Havaianas. I now want to get a pair of leather thong sandals, which there are so many around. We've ran a piece on the site recently. It's the type of trend where every budget qualifies. You've got the Row, you've got your Totems, you've probably got your APCs, you've got M&S as well. Emery have got some really great, I feel like they're a shoe brand that are very like off the moment doing some really good affordable styles. And yeah, I just think a very chic and simple footwear choice that I'm back on that bandwagon.
So
You're a flip-flop girl.
I'm a flip-flop girl. There's a really nice leather pair actually on by Ancient Greek Sandals that is on Les Portrait, and they've got
Ancient
loads of
Greek,
different
yes,
colour.
another one.
I saw them on Emma Rose Thatcher's Instagram, and they're like a red leather, very simple, really smart. I think I'm going to order them. I am actually having a massive footwear dilemma. This is big, all the big problems, because I feel like other than the fisherman sandal that you're wearing today, and even that is not very chunky. Chunky summer footwear is gone, right? It's out. I went yesterday, I went to Harrods and Harvey Nicks, like by myself. I was like, I'm gonna invest. It's time. I bought the Chanel sandals a couple of summers ago. I love them, but the word we keep coming back to is relevant. They just don't feel very relevant. I will, God. And
They're
those shoes
everywhere.
have worked
Such
for me.
choices.
Yeah, but that's not the look anymore.
Yeah.
I looked at every shoe from every brand, and I just do not know what the answer is, because the look this summer is a lot more simple, in which case you can just buy an affordable version of it. Like I'm not going to spend, people are buying the Row leather flip-flops. I mean, do me a favour.
I know. Ridiculous.
£900
Yeah, it was more. I think it's about
Tiny.
900 quid. Like, calm on. So like that's out. But I want to invest in a nice pair of shoes for summer, because my Chanels have worked for every occasion for 2 years. I mean, literally, they have done everything.
And that was amazing to have that cult piece, which literally transformed every look to suddenly feel relevant. And there isn't really that.
There isn't that. There's so many ballet flats out there. I cannot wear a ballet flat. Like, I can't wear a round toe. I'm too short.
Yeah.
I'm too curvy. It's not a good look. Yeah. I mean, I guess a flip-flop sort of does.
I think, it does.
Yeah, it
make a
does.
bridge
And
there.
I think they are comfortable. And I think with that there, you've obviously got the flat styles, and then there's like the really nice little kitten heel, which I would like to get for because I think that's sort of like when you want to dress up slightly an outfit, but then it still gives it that like kind of casual. Like, know, the long denim shorts, that with, I've got that style.
I have that, exactly. I have that from Russell and Bromley a few years ago, which I've worn them to death. They're really comfortable.
Very useful.
But again, like not if I'm pounding.
And
all day.
not for commuting.
No.
I don't think. just too tottery.
Okay, let's move on. Sheerluxe picks. What have you been loving on Sheerluxe in the past few weeks, Lou?
I love our Weekend Outfits feature, and last week we ran Denise Christensen,
This was
who
so
is CEO
So
of Rotate by Christensen. Just such good style, didn't she? And also really good replicable outfit inspo as well. Like obviously she had your Pradas and your Miu Mius in there. But if you are in need of a bit of outfit inspo, such a good person to go to. She had like an Alaya Bandeau white top.
One, yeah.
So amazing.
So
with a pair of jeans and kind of Prada pumps. She had like the rugby shirt, which again, I think you would describe and think, ooh, not sure how I'm going to wear that. But then she rocked out with kind of a wide leg denim and Chanel pumps and an amazing basket bag. I just love her style so much.
She's like a really good example of someone with amazing personal style, right?
Yeah.
Like genuinely really
Except
cool
I was saying to Lou, like, there's all the big brands, like of the moment brands, not quite of the moment pieces, which I think maybe is the key. So she's sort of repping the brands that are, you know, the Elias or what have you, that are having massive moments. But it just looks so original still.
Yeah.
Harriet, what have you loved on Sheerluxe?
Well, I wanted to point out the show. So by the time that this airs, it will actually be the sort of show before the last show.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the one with Binky and Abby. You were hosting.
Thanks.
I know.
Oh, nice.
And obviously Trini's beauty raid.
Amazing,
I mean, we love Trini. I also thought that Abby and Binky were just like really good chat. We've had
Good.
Abby on before, haven't we?
A long time ago.
Yeah, and then
we have.
Binky, obviously people know from Made in Chelsea. So if you haven't watched that, definitely go and watch it because it was a great episode. I loved it.
Good. Oh, thanks. I'll take that. Trini was the highlight, really, wasn't she?
I mean, you can't beat Trini. She's just such good value.
We've got really exciting additional people lined up to do their beauty raids. Like we
I
did
love that
in
sort of
Trini's as
thing.
well.
I'm
like,
so
yeah,
nosy.
really good. I mean, there are so many amazing people in beauty who just have such amazing stuff. So.
The helmet she
I know.
was so
Madness.
amazing.
So fabulous.
A kind of
Yeah.
hair follicle growth helmet which she put on. Was
Although
fantastic.
all Hodge was there when they filmed it, and all she has done since is be like, if someone says, how's Trini? She said not to wear fake tan. She said not to wear fake tan. She said not to wear fake tan.
I love my Bear by Vogue.
I mean, I just love it.
Do you know, I'm wearing the Bear by Vogue water. I put it on this morning.
yeah.
It is so amazing. Polly
know.
swears by it. I can't sleep if I put tan on.
Oh no, I'm
Morgan's
the
bed.
opposite. I have to tan in bed. I can't possibly think about it like oozing through the day.
No, but so that is kind of something I just kind of have to live with. But I put it on this morning and I do not feel oozy at
No.
all. It's not sticky.
It's not, yeah.
It's, I don't know, I can see it like gradually. My hands look so nice.
Yeah, I chopped up my hands with the Bear by Vogue Ultra Dark, the gel, the one in the pink
Yeah.
today, and I think it's maybe not,
Yeah.
but I just needed a bit of colour. They ones.
For pale girlies, if you want a facial tanner and you're not going to listen to facialists, the blue one, it's
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
I actually did that on my feet the other day. I was going to work
That's
and I was
clever.
like, oh my God, my feet are so pale. Just braid it and then I've got a little brush. And
Yes,
then
I've
just,
got a
brush
brush.
over the front.
Bear by Vogue do a body brush,
so
and I
good.
have thought the result on my face is
Yeah.
always so good. Why don't I just use it?
Yeah.
So I feel like everybody's now making a body brush. I have to say the Isle of Paradise one is incredible. I've got a
okay.
couple of them and that is the best one that I keep coming back to. I'm also at the moment using an Isle of Paradise. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a big yellow bottle. And we'll put the link somewhere. It is I know I say this every time I try a new tan, but like it's honestly one of my favourite tans I've ever used. Can I quickly give a shout out to our Ascot experience last week, which was part of a partnership that we've been working with Ascot for a couple of years. This was the first time we partnered with them on Royal Ascot, and I'd never been before. Such fun to be able to dress up and wear a hat. I'd never worn a hat to any event ever. It was just such a lovely day. It's one of those events that like, you sort of can't imagine how it's executed until you're there. We were told, I think it's 69,000 bottles of champagne and 100,000 bottles of wine consumed over the 5 days.
Wow.
It's wild. We were in the Royal Enclosure in something called the Summer House, which is like the most lovely hospitality ever. It's basically got a huge, buffet is a really horrible word, like a lovely spread of food that is basically topped up throughout the entire day. So you can kind of come and go as you please.
love
And
that.
yeah, it like transitioned into tea at one point, but it was just a really spoiling day. I won £69.
So I heard.
Oh my God.
But I lost 20, so I was net up £49.
Well, still, you're
Still
up.
winning.
Happy
What
days.
did you buy with it? Did you
Well, I got it in
reimburse?
cash, so I think it's going to be 2 car cleans.
Nice.
I don't really know what to spend my cash on.
So
But,
adulty.
So I know, but I think you can book tickets for next year already.
Wow.
I don't know. Keep your eyes peeled, but it's so worth a day out. It was just, we were lucky with the weather, but it was just absolutely worth it.
fun.
Yeah. Let's move on. We're going to talk about diffusion lines. Harriet, you found an interesting article on Vogue Business.
Vogue Business, yes.
Tell us.
Diffusion lines are having a revival. Vogue Business is kind of to the point,
Yes.
which is good. But it's a really interesting article because it's talking about how various brands of different kind of relevance are starting to bring back their diffusion lines or starting new diffusion lines. And I think as, you know, three people of relatively the same age, we grew up in an era of diffusion lines.
Totally.
Massively.
Like, I wonder, we should have canvassed the LGs before we did
Yes.
this to find out if they even know what a diffusion line is, because there were so many when we were growing up.
Many. Marked by Marc Jacobs.
Yeah.
And that's relevant because he's the first one mentioned actually in this article, Marc Jacobs Heaven. If people aren't familiar, it's a very Y2K sort of brand. It actually started in 2020, but I suspect it got a bit lost in pandemic craziness.
I actually interned at Marked by Marc Jacobs in my year.
Oh, was it at Marked by Marc specifically? That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Marked by Marc was just
It was so cool.
I guess for those listening who don't know, diffusion lines were more affordable versions of core lines. So Etoile, you mentioned, obviously that's still going. Burberry Brit was another big one. And
even Victoria Beckham started with VVB.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that was, I guess, more recent.
Yeah, that's recently.
But all of these diffusion lines that we've named have... Oh, no, Etoile obviously is still going, but have subsequently closed for the most part.
Yes, including Victoria Beckham's, which is interesting because... I think what was starting to happen, or that brands weren't liking, their CEOs certainly weren't liking, was that it was diluting the main brand. So it was enticing, particularly because it was such a lower, more accessible price point. People might flock to the diffusion line and not invest in the main one, but also it then, this is like a very cynical way of looking at it, but I do think it's the way that fashion brands operated 15 years ago, which was they had an ideal customer in mind. So then when you sort of open the floodgates and make it accessible to anyone, you sort of get a lot of people repping the brand that maybe you think, well, it's not really meant to be the Marc Jacobs
That's
girl.
your creative director versus your like commercial director.
Yeah. I do think it was the way that fashion brands operated 15 years ago, when there was a lot more snobbishness around, a lot more exclusivity around.
I actually think that the model is different, but that is the case even more now, because if you whack out the diffusion lines and you look at the prices of luxury goods now, it's hardly trying to be an inclusive space.
No,
It's
true,
quite the opposite. It almost feels like a kind of Emperor's New Clothes type space,
Yeah.
where they're like, we're just going to bump up the price and see if people still
Yeah,
buy it.
and I
Still
didn't think the quality was really very different on either of them. It was just one had a much higher price point.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You think the diffusion quality was there?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It
I
wasn't
suppose
all
for those
my
examples
Marc
it
by
has
Marc
been.
stuff.
Yeah.
I don't remember thinking like, oh, this is a
I
knockoff.
think it like I'm speaking generally, but a lot of the time it was kind of styled, I guess, in a slightly younger way. Like the approach for kind of who that was for is kind of, I guess, like an entry level into the brand, and then that you would then become that kind of.
It's like LG to Sherlock.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's interesting, I think, and what sort of encapsulates the idea that diffusion lines become so irrelevant is that Miu Miu is actually a diffusion line of Prada.
But is it a diffusion line? Just
No.
because it's
No,
not.
that's my
It's a
point.
derivative.
Yeah.
Or it's just an additional.
But that's
It's
what
another
my
answer
point
because-
is that's what it was intended to be. And then diffusion was sort of so meh, and people were going off it so radically that I think clearly there's been this strategy at Prada to just not make that a thing. Like Miu Miu's its own thing. It's maybe like a little sister brand. But
it is in terms of style, but it's not in terms of price point.
Absolutely not. No. So yeah, it's just interesting that was the intention. It hasn't panned out that way. However, in this article, like I say, Marc Jacobs Heaven has been sort of noted. Aries, which is a brand I'm not as familiar with. You two might know more about it, but they do these no problemo t-shirts that have been quite viral. Anyway, they're now making that into a whole
T-shirts
line.
was always actually like a really easy way, and I guess that is probably where a lot of brands I think tapped into.
And I don't know if you would agree with this, but I think a lot of those t-shirts were obviously very logo-y or like very recognizable. And
like
maybe a
Gucci
diffusion
t-shirts.
customer cares more about that. They care more about people knowing that they've got something from a
and I think
brand.
that's a like, look at me with my logo, like I can afford this brand.
But it's interesting that brands are now kind of creeping back towards diffusion lines rather than just making their price points more accessible, right?
But are they doing diffusion the way that the three of us understand diffusion, I guess, is the question. Because Aries have had like major success with this one motif that they're now spinning out. So the other brand that's name checked in here is Bodhi. And they are launching a sports sort of athleisure brand in the autumn, which will be called Bodhi Rec. And it's a real like trendy brand at the moment, but it's not diffusing its sort of core aesthetic. It's diffusing into this completely separate almost
I
business.
kind of rate that more though,
Yeah,
rather
I do.
than I guess like filtering down what your look is to something that is kind of like not quite a version of but sort of is, and then you're not quite sure, well, you know who you are, but like it's not really your true customer. it's more like, okay, this is like another version of where we might go, which like is a more affordable version which we can bring new customers in, but it's not kind of alienating this market.
It doesn't feel like dilution to me,
No.
which I think is what the brands ran into trouble with in the sort of 2010s era.
Yeah, I think
because often, you know, even with like Etoile and Isabel, you can kind of look at two blouses and be like, I don't really understand what the difference between what these two is.
Yeah.
I remember getting an actual Isabel Marant blouse. I got it in a sample sale. And I remember it being, I think it was something like £395, like full price, just thinking, okay, God, the quality of this must be absolutely incredible. And it's 100% polyester.
Yeah. Well, we were having this conversation with Polly the other day, weren't we, about quality versus price point and how once upon a time high price point designer equaled better quality, and actually over the last 20 years that is like just so no longer the case. And actually t-shirts, case in point, like, you know, that just doesn't mean that the quality's there. We have that conversation over denim always, don't we? Because like in my opinion, denim is a fabric. It's you know, so why pay more? I know you feel different.
You don't agree with that?
No, not at all. No, because I like every high street pair of jeans that I have ever worn, always like the denim gets really soft, like the knee starts to bend out, like they don't, like even when you fold them, they don't kind of hold their shape at all. Whereas when you invest, I have found when I invest, Levi's aside, that the shape remains like they keep their shape for so much longer.
And you have thoughts about knitwear, don't you? You think knitwear's worth spending more money on?
Personally, yes. I like, look, again, it kind of comes down to the fabrication, like what, you know, is cashmere on the high street, that's different. You know, you can spend £1,200 on an Elder Statesman jumper or £100 in M&S. Is the quality going to be that different? Probably not. But if you take cashmere out of the equation, I do think when you're looking at wool, generally investing lasts much longer.
Yeah, I think it's always the quality of the fabrication. I think like cut, like maybe knitwear is different, but kind of dresses, tailoring, that is so much about like the cut. And I think you're really paying for the craftsmanship around like the way that's cut on the bias, the way that everything is crafted. But yeah, knitwear, the I guess the silhouette. How
but to me it's about how
it's about fabric.
Exactly that.
And do you not think aesthetic comes into it at all? Because I think Elder Statesman, I love that brand. It's so cool because the designs are so unique to me and very difficult to find something similar.
I think C is a really good example of that.
Yes.
Like where, you know, they're knit, or even like a Love Shack where they, you know, it's where there's the kind of the applique, the design, something different. Like you cannot get that on the high street. I have yet to see a high street brand be able to replicate that. So yeah, you can buy a black jumper from anywhere, but something that's a bit more kind of interesting and different.
And obviously, like, you know, a lot of these pieces you are paying for the brand and you're paying for the status. I don't think these brands like are unfamiliar with the fact that obviously there's going to be high street rip-offs of it, but like they're not like for like.
Exactly.
And you look at something like Bodhi, and I think there's an argument to say it's a short sleeves shirt, like you can get that anywhere, and it's probably 100% cotton. But to me, it's like no, the aesthetic of that brand is so hard to replicate.
I was about to say, I think Bodhi is a really good example of a brand like a C jumper, which is really, you can replicate the aesthetic. You can, you know, you can shoot a Zara model kind of looking like definitely. A Bodhi model in a similar space, but the product there is done, as you say, with such craftsmanship, such an eye, and such unique. Again, that's why it comes down to kind of the patterns, or, you know, the prints and the detail.
Yeah. And I think, you know, supporting those brands as well, like a lot of those brands as well, like the cost of creating those products now has got so expensive, like the fabrics, the factories, and they are obscenely expensive, and I don't think that is because the brands are putting a huge markup on it. It's it's what they are. It's the cost of production on it, totally. And kind of supporting, I guess, those kind of smaller contemporary.
I was going to say there's a difference, isn't there, between supporting a Bodhi and supporting a Louis Vuitton ready-to-wear line.
Totally.
Absolutely.
It's amazing to see some of those smaller under the radar brands really having a moment and people buying into it, and it's quality, and it's going to pieces that are going to last, and they're different to your everyday pieces. So yeah, I think that there's there's not a kind of one size fits all with a reason of why something's more expensive and you shouldn't buy into it, because I think there are pieces that if you can afford it, great to support it.
Yeah, but and sorry, I was just gonna say that kind of it all plays into my argument of like invest in, and obviously it comes down to personal style, but invest in like a colour or something that isn't, obviously I'm not claiming that a Zara navy blazer is the same as an Armani navy blazer. However, they're harder to distinguish, especially, you know, now that there are designer collaborations and brands kind of upping the ante when it comes to whatever it might be, they're tailoring whatever. Whereas if you buy something like a Bodhi piece, it can only really be from that brand.
We did Lucy Williams's wardrobe tour recently. I don't know
Oh my
if any
God,
of you have
it was
seen
so
it.
good.
So
It was so good.
And she had so many pieces that entirely encapsulate what you just said. She had an amazing Bodhi kind of waistcoat which she wore to a wedding with like beautiful white beads and like navy intricate details, and it's just it's those pieces that really like could stand out as well in the wardrobe and will last us time.
We've diffused away from diffusion lines.
Well,
Harriet,
we
how does it
haven't,
conclude?
because I think ultimately the point is they're doing diffusion for 2024, which is not diffusion at all, because it's not about dilution. It's about, as Lou said, it's about like adding branches to your business and perhaps doing it in a small way that feels more like an experiment that, you know, if this sports line doesn't work out. Interestingly, Bodhi's already done a sneaker collab with Nike.
Yes, of course.
So I feel like they've perhaps tested the water a bit on that, in the same way that Aries have tested the water with No Problemo. And they're thinking there's an appetite for this. We think it could be bigger. That's exciting. Let's see where it can go. I don't get the sense that, you know, when things like Mark by Mark launched, it was like, this is a whole new set of offices. You know, it's a whole new thing. I don't get that feeling now, but it's definitely got sort of flickers of that era. So I'm interested to see where it all goes.
I think we'll leave it there. We've talked a lot. Let's not do community questions. Do keep sending us your questions though. Maybe we'll do a bumper question special next time. Thank you both so much, and thank you for listening. If you have any feedback at all, please do email podcast@sheerluxe.com. We love hearing from you. Don't forget also to rate, review, subscribe, and tell your friends. And we'll see you next time. Bye.